We are joined now by Megan Taplin, Table Mountain National Park Manager. Very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us. Can you tell us a little bit from your observations about these runaway fires, especially around Simonstown? Some have described them as quite severe, and I'd like to understand the conditions under which make these fires so severe.
Yes, good evening. We are in the fire season now, so it's not unusual for fires to occur at this time of year. It is when we expect fires to occur, but of course, human activity with starting fires, whether they're cooking fires or whatever they are, is what causes these kind of fires. And when we have strong winds, which we have had very strong gusts of up to 50 to 70 kilometers per hour, particularly on Thursday night, that just fans the flames and spreads it and, causes spot fires to form. So at one stage, firefighters were fighting the fire on many different fronts, and it was very difficult to bring under control. Today, we have managed to bring the fire under control. It's now considered 95% contained, which doesn't mean it's out completely. It means that it's contained in the area which it's burnt. We estimate that about 3,500 hectares of land has burned so far. This is a combination of land in Table Mountain National Park as well as private land and public works land.
So, as you say, it is the core fire season, but I'm just trying to understand if climate change has in any way played a strong role in the current fires. The land that has been burned is natural vegetation that would burn in this manner.
Yes, I do think climate change will have some kind of effect, and it will continue to have an effect into the future because, for example, hotter and drier conditions are expected, as a result of climate change. And we also expect more extreme conditions, such as very strong winds, to occur. So that could all lead to fires getting, quite out of control and covering large areas of land. The fynbos vegetation is fire adapted. Many species of fynbos actually require fire to burn. So it's not a disaster for the fynbos vegetation, but of course when there's alien invasive vegetation involved, as there are in some of the land where it burnt, that causes the fire to become much more extreme and much hotter.
So I'm glad that you say that, because we were speaking to microbiologists earlier in the year, aerial microbiologists, who were talking about alien species and how the spores have actually spread in a manner that is uncontrollable. So I hear some have said, the Simonstown fires a fire that kind of were expected, but the vegetation fire reported along the Lake Kern Expressway that rapidly intensified, advancing in the direction of the Stonehaven and Evergreen Estate. So the direction of the wind itself, I'd imagine that it hasn't been according to the climatic conditions that you are used to.
Well, during the course of the fire, and remember this is day 5 of the fire, so, the firefighters have been battling it since Tuesday morning. It started at 7 a.m. in the morning, which is very unlikely for a fire, to start at that time of the day when conditions are haven't heated up yet. There were some wind changes during the course of the fire. Some of these weren't predicted. When a wind is blowing at a constant speed, it's much easier for us to predict where the fire is going to travel and where to put our resources to fight the fire. But when the wind starts gusting and changing direction regularly, that is when it's very difficult to bring the fire under control, because fires are spotting and starting on all new fronts. And of course, alien invasive vegetation also causes the fire to go into the canopy. Whereas fynbos is quite a low vegetation which burns quite regularly, but the alien vegetation brings it high up into the canopy and might cause the fires to jump and spot.
And That's what I was reading earlier on about the behavior of how some of these vegetation, as it's drying out, flies up into the air and somehow catches fire because of the heat. But the climate change projections for Cape Town also suggest a generally worsening fire conditions well into the future. How much more dangerous is this going to get for the area?
Well, I think, as I mentioned earlier, we might get hotter, drier conditions. We might get less rainfall, although this is obviously not our rainfall season. But that has an effect with, how the vegetation grows and everything. So I do think, that we might get more extreme winds, hotter conditions, which might exacerbate these kind of fires. We also have to acknowledge that there are a lot of people moving into Cape Town. The population is growing. So that just makes, human activities rise as well. There's more chance for people to, start fires, whether it's through fires that they made for cooking or a braai facility, and then they got out of control, or whether it's cigarette butts that are thrown into the bush and that got out of control. So I think, there's, as we go into the future, with more people moving in and more people using the natural environment, more people on the urban edge between the park and the city, we need to watch out for these kind of triggers to fires.
Is the management adapting with these changing trends? If reports say you're having, for instance, this year 400 more vegetation fires, it should, pardon the pun, spark a new way of thinking.
I think what we are doing is managing the vegetation and the fire regime as best we can. So, during the non-fire season, when conditions are not likely to cause runaway fires, we do what we call ecological burns as well, where we make sure we burn smaller areas of land, that might have where the vegetation might have got very old and therefore has a high fuel load. So we try to manage the age of the vegetation that way, and reduce the fire risk at the same time as helping the ecological regime of the vegetation.
All right, thank you so much for your time, and wishing you and the firefighters all the best in managing that blaze.